Hello, welcome to Flat Earth Admiral. Please press the red subscribe button to get notification on our video update. The stationary immovable fixed Earth. Ancient civilizations the world over believed Earth to be the flat, immovable center of the universe around which the heavens revolve daily cycles in perfect circles. This stable geocentric universe, proven true by experience and experiments, which reigned undisputed for thousands of years adequately explaining all earthly and celestial phenomena, was violently uprooted, spun around, and sent flying through infinite space by a Kabbalah sun-worshipping 11 theoretical astronomers. Early Masonic magicians like Copernicus, Kepler, Galileo, and Newton, along with their modern Masonic astronaut counterparts like Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins, hand in hand with NASA and World Freemasonry have pulled off the greatest hoax, propagated the most phenomenal lie, and perpetuated the most complete indoctrination in history. Over the course of 500 years, using everything from books, magazines, and television to computer-generated imaging, a multi-generational conspiracy has succeeded, in their minds of the masses, to pick up the fixed Earth, shape it into a ball, spin it in circles, and throw it around the sun. In schools where every professor's desk is adorned with a spinning Earth globe, we are lectured on the heliocentric theory of their universe, shown images of ball planets and videos of men suspended in space. The illusion created, connivingly convincing, has entranced the world's population into blindly believing a maleficent myth. The greatest cover-up of all time, NASA and Freemasonry's biggest secret, is that we are living on a plane, not a planet. That Earth is the flat, stationary center of the universe. We are told that though the Earth has the appearance of being a vast plane, with the sun moving high above and over the Earth, that what we see is a deception. It is an optical illusion, for it is not the sun that moves, but the Earth, with the sea and all that in them is, in their form of a globe, whizzing with terrific rapidity round the sun. Located millions of miles away, its mean distance being assumed to be 91 millions of miles, and that the Earth travels at the rate of 68,000 miles an hour, or 19 miles every second. Lady Blunt, Clarion's Science versus God's Truth. If the government or NASA had said to you that the Earth is stationary, imagine that. And then imagine we are trying to convince people that no, it's not stationary, it's moving forward at 32 times rifle bullet speed and spinning at 1,000 miles per hour. We would be laughed at. We would have so many people telling us you are crazy, the Earth is not moving. We would be ridiculed for having no scientific backing for this convoluted moving Earth theory. And not only that, but then people would say, oh, then how do you explain a fixed, calm atmosphere and the sun's observable movement? How do you explain that? Imagine saying to people, no, the atmosphere is moving also, but is somehow magically velcroed to the moving Earth. The reason is not simply because their Earth is stationary. So what we are actually doing is what makes sense. We are saying that the moving Earth theory is nonsense. The stationary Earth theory makes sense, and we are being ridiculed. You've got to picture it being the other way around to realize just how ridiculous this situation is. This theory from their government and NASA that the Earth is rotating and orbiting and leaning over and wobbling is absolute nonsense, and yet people are clinging to it tightly, like a teddy bear. They just can't bring themselves to face their possibility that the Earth is stationary, though all the evidence shows it. We feel no movement, the atmosphere hasn't been blown away, we see the sun move from east to west. Everything can be explained by a motionless Earth without bringing in all these assumptions to cover up previous assumptions. Gone bad. Alan Daves. If the Earth truly were a spinning ball orbiting the Sun, there are several tests and experiments which could be, and have been, conducted to prove or disprove their veracity of such a claim. For example, Danish astronomer Tycho Brahe famously argued against a heliocentric theory in his time, positing that if their Earth revolved in an orbit round the Sun, the change in relative position of their stars after 6 months of orbital motion could not fail to be seen. He argued that the stars should seem to separate as we approach and come together as we recede. In actual fact, however, after almost 200 million miles of supposed orbit around the Sun, not a single inch of parallax can be detected in the stars. 13. If the Earth is at a given point in space on, say, January 1st, and according to present-day science, at a distance of 190 million miles from that point 6 months afterwards, it follows that the relative position and directions of the stars will have greatly changed, however small the angle of parallax may be. That this great change is nowhere apparent, and has never been observed, incontestably proves that the Earth is at rest, that it does not move in an orbit round the Sun. Thomas Winship, Zetetic Cosmogony, 67. Take 2 carefully burred metallic tubes, not less than 6 feet in length, and place them 1 yard asunder, on their opposite sides of a wooden frame, or a solid block of wood or stone, so adjust them that their centers or axes of vision shall be perfectly parallel to each other. Now, direct them to the plane of some notable fixed star, a few seconds previous to its meridian time. Let an observer be stationed at each tube, and the moment the star appears in the first tube, let a loud knock or other signal be given, to be repeated by the observer at the second tube when he first sees the same star. A distinct period of time will elapse between the signals given. The signals will follow each other in very rapid succession, but still, their time between is sufficient to show that the same star is not visible at the same moment by 2 parallel lines of sight when only 1 yard asunder. A slight inclination of the second tube towards the first tube would be required for their star to be seen through both tubes at the same instant. Let the tubes remain in their position for 6 months, at the end of which time the same observation or experiment will produce the same results. The star will be visible at the same meridian time, without the slightest alteration being required in the direction of the tubes, from which it is concluded that if the Earth had moved 1 single yard in an orbit through space, there would at least be observed the slight inclination of the tube which the difference in position of 1 yard had previously required. But as no such difference in the direction of the tube is required, the conclusion is unavoidable, that in 6 months a given meridian upon the Earth's surface does not move a single yard, and therefore, that the Earth has not the slightest degree of orbital motion. Samuel Robotham, Zetetic Astronomy. 14. When Tycho Brahe demonstrated that after 190 million miles of supposed orbit around their Sun, not a single inch of parallax could be detected, desperate heliocentrists, instead of conceding, doubled down, claiming the stars were all actually trillions upon trillions of miles away from us, so distant that no appreciable parallax could ever be detected. This convenient explanation, which heliocentrists have clung to for centuries, has proven satisfactory to silence their uninquisitive minds of the masses, but still fails to adequately address many observable phenomena such as our wildly implausible synchronization with Polaris and other improbabilities which will be addressed later. The idea that the Earth, if it were a globe, could possibly move in an orbit of hundreds of millions of miles with such exactitude that the crosshairs in a telescope fixed on its surface would appear to glide gently over a star millions of miles away is simply monstrous, whereas, with a fixed telescope, it matters not the distance of the stars, though we suppose them to be as far off as the astronomer supposes them to be, for, as Mr. Richard Proctor himself says, the further away they are, the less they will seem to shift. Why, in the name of common sense, should observers have to fix their telescopes on solid stone bases, so that they should not move a hair's breadth, if the Earth on which they fix them moves at the rate of 19 miles in a second? Indeed, to believe that Mr. Proctor's mass of 6,000 million tons is rolling, surging, flying, darting on through space forever, with a velocity compared with which a 15 shot from a cannon is a very slow coach, with such unerring accuracy that a telescope fixed on granite pillars in an observatory will not enable a lynx-eyed astronomer to detect a variation in its onward motion of the thousandth part of a hair's breadth is to conceive a miracle compared with which all the miracles on record put together would sink into utter insignificance. Captain R.J. Morrison, the late compiler of Zadkiel's Almanac, says, "We declare that this motion is all mere bosh, and that the arguments which uphold it are, when examined with an eye that seeks for truth, mere nonsense, and childish absurdity." William Carpenter, 100 Proofs the Earth is Not a Globe, 98. Another experiment, repeatedly performed to disprove Earth's supposed rotation under our feet, is firing cannons vertically and horizontally in all cardinal directions. If the Earth were truly spinning eastwards underneath us as the heliocentric model suggests, then vertically fired cannonballs should fall significantly due west. In actual fact, though, whenever this has been tested, vertically fired cannonballs, perfectly aimed with a plumb line, lit with a slow match, shoot upwards an average of 14 seconds ascending, 14 seconds descending, and fall back to the ground no more than 2 feet away from the cannon, sometimes directly back into the muzzle. If the Earth were actually spinning at the supposed rate of 600 to 700 miles per hour at the mid-latitudes of England and America, where the tests have been performed, the cannonballs should fall a full 8,400 feet, or over a mile and a half behind the cannon. The following experiment has been tried many times, and the reasonable deductions from it are entirely against any theory of Earth's motion. A loaded cannon was set vertical by plumb line and spirit level and fired. The average time the ball was in the air was 28 seconds. On several occasions the ball returned to the mouth of the cannon, and never fell more than 2 feet from its base. Now, let us see what the result would be if the Earth were a rapidly rotating sphere. The ball would partake of 2 motions, the one from the cannon, vertical, and the other from the Earth, from west to east. While it had been ascending, the Earth, with the cannon, would have moved significantly. In descending it would have no impulse from the Earth's motion or from there. 16. Cannon, and would fall in a straight line, but during the time it were falling, the Earth, with the cannon, would have traveled on, and the ball would fall, allowing the world's rotation to be 600 miles per hour in England, more than a mile and a half behind the cannon. A.E. Skellum. Again, at this point, instead of conceding, desperate heliocentrists triple down, claiming the reason cannonballs fall straight back is because the magical properties of gravity allow Earth to somehow drag the entire lower atmosphere in perfect synchronization with its axial spin, rendering even such breakneck speeds completely unnoticeable to the observer and unmeasurable by experimentation. This highly implausible, though clever and convenient explanation only holds for vertically fired cannons. However, if cannons are instead fired and measured in all cardinal directions, even the heliocentrist's atmospheric velcro trump card becomes unplayable. North-south firing cannonballs establish a control. Then the east-firing cannonballs should fall significantly farther than all others, and west-firing cannonballs should fall significantly closer due to their supposed 19 mile per second eastward rotation of the Earth. In actual fact, however, regardless of which direction cannons are fired, north, south, east, or west, the distance covered is always the same. When sitting in a rapidly moving railway carriage, let a spring gun be fired forward, or in the direction in which the train is moving. Again, let the same gun be fired, but in the opposite direction, and it will be found that the ball or other projectile will always go farther in the first case than in the latter. If a person leaps backwards from a horse in full gallop, he cannot jump so great a distance as he can by jumping forward. Leaping from a moving sledge, coach, or other object, backwards or forwards, the same results are experienced. Many other practical cases could be cited to show that any body projected from another body in motion does not exhibit the same behavior as it does when projected from a body at rest. Nor are the results the same when projected in the same direction as that in which the body moves, as when projected in the opposite direction, because, in the former case, the projected body receives its momentum from the projectile force, plus that given to it by the moving body, and in their latter case, this momentum, minus that of the moving body. Hence it would be found that if the Earth is moving rapidly from west to east, a cannon fired in a due easterly direction would send a ball to a greater distance than it would if fired in a due westerly direction. But the most experienced artillerymen, many of whom have had great practice, both at home and abroad, in almost every latitude, have declared that no difference whatever is observable. That in charging and pointing their guns, no difference in the working is ever required. gunners in warships have noticed a considerable difference in the results of their firing from guns at the bow, when sailing rapidly towards the object fired at, and when firing from guns placed at the stern while sailing away from their object, and in both cases the results are different to those observed when firing from a ship at perfect rest. These details of practical experience are utterly incompatible with the supposition of a revolving Earth. Dr. Samuel Robotham, Zetetic Astronomy, Earth Not a Globe! 73. It is in evidence that, if a projectile be fired from a rapidly moving body in an opposite direction to that in which the body is going, it will fall short of their distance at which it would reach the ground if fired in the direction of motion. Now, since the Earth is said to move at the rate of 19 miles in a second of time, from west to east, it would make all their difference imaginable if the gun were fired in an opposite direction. But, as, in practice, there is not the slightest difference, whichever way the thing may be done, we have a forcible overthrow of all fancies relative to the motion of the Earth. William Carpenter, 100 Proofs the Earth is Not a Globe, 44. During the Crimean War, the subject of artillery fire in connection with the Earth's rotation became a hotly discussed topic among military men, scientists, philosophers and statesmen. Around this time, on December 20, 1857, British Prime Minister Lord Palmerston wrote to the Secretary of War Lord Panmure, stating, "There is an investigation which it would be important and at the same time easy to make, and that is, whether the rotation of the Earth on its axis has any effect on the curve of a cannonball in its flight. One should suppose that it has, and that while the cannonball is flying in the air, impelled by their gunpowder in a straight line from the cannon's mouth, the ball would not follow the rotation of the Earth in the same manner which it would do if lying at rest on the Earth's surface." Thank you for watching this video. Please remember to press the red subscribe button.